Welcome back, everyone, to the deep dive. Wow, you've really given us quite the collection of sources this time around, all about alternative cancer treatments
Yeah.
and the history of some medical controversies.
It's quite the mix.
Yeah, we've got excerpts from a book. I think it's in Arabic, some scientific papers, a few historical reports. Definitely a lot to unpack.
It certainly is. It promises to be a fascinating deep dive.
I think so, too. Our mission, if we can call it that, is to, I guess, unearth the most intriguing claims that we find in all of these.
Right.
And we're going to really try to examine the evidence or lack thereof, try to understand, why there was pushback on these treatments.
Yeah.
And ultimately, I guess, see what it all means for the ongoing quest for, better cancer cures.
Absolutely.
So with that in mind, I think a great place to start would be with someone who's almost a legend in alternative medicine.
Okay.
Royal Rife. Have you heard of him?
Royal Rife, yes. A truly captivating figure.
Yeah. These sources describe him as brilliant, but ultimately a tragic inventor. Back in the early 20th century, he created this incredibly powerful microscope.
Oh, wow.
It was called the universal microscope.
The universal microscope.
And get this, it could magnify objects up to 60,000 times their size.
Think about that for a moment. The standard light microscopes at that time could only magnify objects about 2,000 times.
Right.
Rife's invention, it really opened up a whole new world, especially in microbiology.
And this is where things get really interesting, right? So Rife claimed that he could not only see these viruses and bacteria in unprecedented detail, but also destroy them using something he called resonant frequencies.
Resonant frequencies, interesting.
Yeah, it was like he believed every microorganism vibrated at this specific frequency, and by hitting it with that same frequency, he could essentially make it, fall apart.
This idea of using frequencies to influence biological processes wasn't entirely new. Electrotherapy had been around for a while, dating back to the late 19th century.
Okay.
But what Rife was claiming, especially with cancer, was way more radical.
And, radical's right. In 1934, Rife even claimed to have cured 16 terminally ill cancer patients using his technology, which he called the Rife machine.
The Rife machine.
This was particularly striking because it, challenged the accepted cancer treatments of the time, which mainly relied on surgery and radiation.
Right.
Rife's approach, using specific frequencies to target cancer cells, was completely different from anything mainstream medicine was doing.
And that's where the controversy really begins. Even with these claims, Rife's work never gained widespread acceptance in the scientific community. The main issue was a lack of solid scientific proof to back up his findings.
Right. And to add fuel to the fire, our sources suggest that someone may have actively tried to suppress his technology. Some accounts even claim medical authorities, perhaps influenced by pharmaceutical companies, went so far as to destroy Rife's microscopes in his research.
It's a tangled tale, that's for sure. There were undoubtedly powerful forces at play in the medical establishment back then, but without proper documentation and controlled studies, separating fact from fiction in Rife's case is incredibly difficult.
Okay, I can see that. So whether or not any of that is true, Rife's story has become kind of a rallying cry for those who believe in alternative medicine. They view him as, a visionary genius who was silenced by the system.
Right.
A system that protects traditional treatments and prioritizes profits.
A familiar theme, unfortunately.
Yeah, for sure. That brings us to a fascinating concept that's woven throughout all of these sources.
Okay.
The debate between pleomorphism and monomorphism.
Yes.
Might sound a bit technical at first, but it's really key to understanding, the resistance that a lot of these alternative treatments often face.
You're right. It's a fundamental concept. Monomorphism, which is the dominant view in microbiology, holds that microorganisms exist in fixed, unchanging forms.
Okay.
Think of it like this. Each bacterium has its own specific shape and function, and that's it.
So they're kind of static.
Exactly. Pleomorphism, however, suggests that microbes are much more adaptable. They can actually change forms based on their environment.
Wow.
Morphing from bacteria to viruses or even to fungal forms.
So you're telling me a single bacterium could transform into something completely different?
That's the idea.
Well, that's a game changer.
It is, and it really challenges the foundations of conventional germ theory. One of your sources mentions a scientist named Virginia Livingston Wheeler.
Okay.
She was a strong advocate for pleomorphism. She claimed to have isolated a specific bacterium that could change forms and was actually responsible for causing cancer.
Okay, so if pleomorphism is true, then our understanding of diseases like cancer might be way off.
Possibly.
It could also explain why some alternative treatments, which might target different forms of a microbe, seem to work for some people,
Yeah.
even if mainstream medicine doesn't fully understand why.
Exactly. And this raises a very important question. Has the medical establishment's focus on monomorphism prevented us from exploring alternative approaches? Have we dismissed potentially valuable treatments simply because they don't fit the prevailing model?
Right, it's like we're limiting ourselves based on our assumptions.
Precisely.
And this leads us to the next part of our deep dive, the alleged suppression of alternative cancer treatments.
Oh, yes.
Some of the stories here are pretty unsettling, especially the one about a researcher named Cornelius P. Rhodes.
Yes, Rhodes' story is disturbing. He was a leading figure in cancer research, but your sources detail some serious allegations about his work in the 1930s.
Yeah.
He's accused of deliberately injecting cancer cells into Puerto Rican patients without their consent, resulting in several deaths.
That's awful. And it gets even more suspicious. Apparently, Rhodes wrote a letter where he admitted to these actions.
Is that right?
Yeah. And this letter was later used in a lawsuit. It makes you question the ethics of medical research back then. And, the lengths to which some might go to protect their careers and reputations.
It's a stark reminder of the power dynamics that exist within the medical establishment. Those who go against the grain, especially those promoting unconventional treatments, often face significant opposition.
Yeah. And this is where organizations like the American Medical Association, AMA, come into play. They've been around since the late 19th century, and our sources point to their huge influence in shaping medical practices and policies.
The AMA, yeah.
Historically, they've played a key role in marginalizing alternative treatments, labeling them as quackery, and often actively working to discredit those who practice them. And then there's also the issue of potential conflicts of interest. The sources highlight the growing influence of pharmaceutical companies on research funding. This raises concerns about whether certain avenues of research, especially those that might threaten the profits of existing drugs, are being prioritized over others.
That's a valid concern.
Yeah, it's a complex web of factors, that's for sure. But I think the key takeaway seems clear. Critical thinking is crucial.
Absolutely.
We can't just blindly accept any claim, regardless of whether it comes from conventional medicine or alternative practitioners.
Agreed.
We have to evaluate the evidence, be aware of potential biases, and stay open to new possibilities.
I agree completely. And that leads us to our final area of exploration for this part of our deep dive: vibratory energy medicine. This concept builds on Rife's ideas and explores the potential of using specific frequencies and energy fields to influence biological processes.
Okay, so this is where things start to get a little mind-bending. We're talking about using sound waves, electromagnetic fields, even light, to potentially treat diseases.
Right. It might sound far-fetched, but remember, we already use these principles in established medical technologies. Think of ultrasound imaging, or MRI. These techniques rely on our understanding of how energy interacts with the body.
That's a good point. I hadn't thought about it like that. So maybe it's not as out there as it seems. Our sources even mention a researcher named Gary Wade, who's doing some fascinating work with pulsed magnetic field therapy.
Wade's work is intriguing, exploring the potential of using pulsed magnetic fields to stimulate healing and even regenerate tissue. It's still early, but the possibilities are certainly exciting.
So what does this all mean for the future of medicine? Are we on the cusp of a major shift in thinking? Could energy-based therapies one day be used alongside or even replace traditional drugs and surgeries?
That's a question that demands careful consideration. While the potential of vibratory energy medicine is fascinating, we must stay grounded in scientific rigor. More research, more controlled trials, and more evidence are needed before we can make any definitive claims about its effectiveness and safety.
Right, of course. But it's still a path worth exploring, don't you think?
Oh, absolutely. Just imagine the possibilities if we could harness the power of energy and frequency to heal the body.
Imagine, indeed. And maybe that's the most important takeaway from all of this. To remain curious, to keep exploring, and to never stop questioning the limits of what we think we know.
I couldn't agree more. It's a journey that requires us to not only explore, scientifically, but also to re-examine our assumptions about health and disease.
Especially when you consider that, those assumptions might have been shaped by powerful institutions.
Right.
And their own interest.
Precisely. And speaking of powerful institutions, your sources also bring up a curious case involving the American Cancer Society.
The American Cancer Society. Yeah, they're kind of the heavy hitters in the fight against cancer, right?
Yes, indeed.
Funding research, raising awareness, providing support to patients.
Right.
But these sources suggest they might not be as straightforward as they seem.
One of the documents you provided, a report titled The Rife Microscope of Facts and Their Fats, claims there was an attempt to buy Rife's technology back in the 1950s.
Really? Who was behind that?
The report suggests it was a group with ties to the American Cancer Society. They supposedly offered Rife a large sum of money for his technology.
Okay.
But he turned them down.
Why would he refuse? If he truly believed his machine could cure cancer, wouldn't you want to get it into as many hands as possible?
It's a puzzling detail, for sure. The report speculates that Rife might have been suspicious of their motives.
Okay.
He may have worried that his technology would be suppressed or shelved if it fell into the wrong hands.
Which, considering what supposedly happened with his microscopes, wouldn't be all that surprising.
Exactly.
This whole story has a real David versus Goliath feel to it.
It does, doesn't it? It really highlights the challenges anyone faces when they dare to question the accepted norms, especially when powerful interests are involved.
Right. And speaking of challenging the norm, let's talk about another fascinating idea from your sources. Using light and color to treat disease.
Yes. The work of Georges Lakhovsky.
Lakhovsky.
He was a Russian engineer who developed a theory about cellular oscillation and how it relates to health and disease.
So, in simple terms, what was his theory?
Lakhovsky believed that every cell in the body is essentially a tiny electromagnetic oscillator capable of emitting and receiving electromagnetic waves. He argued that disease happens when these cellular oscillations are disrupted or become unbalanced.
Okay, that's an interesting concept.
Yeah.
How did he propose to fix that?
He invented a device called the multiple wave oscillator. It was basically a complex antenna system designed to generate a wide range of frequencies.
So like a radio tower for your cells.
Exactly. He believed that by exposing the body to this broad spectrum of frequencies, he could reharmonize cellular oscillations and promote healing. Imagine a piano that's out of tune. By adjusting each string, you can restore its harmony.
Okay.
Lakhovsky believed he could do something similar for the body's cells.
Did his device work?
Lakhovsky claimed to have achieved some remarkable results with his device, particularly in treating cancer. He documented many case studies in his book, The Secret of Life, Cosmic Rays and Radiations of Living Beings.
But I'm guessing, just like with Rife, his work wasn't exactly welcomed by mainstream medicine.
You're right. Lakhovsky's theories were considered highly controversial and lacked the scientific validation needed to gain widespread acceptance. His work is largely considered to be in the realm of alternative medicine.
That's a shame because the idea of using light and color to heal is so intriguing.
And it's not entirely without merit. We know, for instance, that certain wavelengths of light can have therapeutic effects. Think of photodynamic therapy, which uses light to activate drugs that destroy cancer cells.
Right, or even something as simple as using sunlight to boost vitamin D levels.
Exactly. So while Lakhovsky's specific theories might not have been fully proven, they definitely open up some interesting avenues for exploration.
So we've got Rife with his resonant frequencies, Lakhovsky with his cellular oscillations. It seems like there's a recurring theme here. Energy and vibration being key to understanding health and disease.
That's a sharp observation, and it connects with another fascinating concept mentioned in your sources, the work of Wilhelm Reich and his theory of orgone energy.
Orgone energy. That sounds pretty out there.
It is, but hear me out. Reich was an Austrian psychoanalyst who later delved into biophysics. He claimed to have discovered a universal life force energy that he called orgone.
Okay. And what was this orgone energy supposed to do?
Reich believed that orgone was essential for life and health. He argued that blockages or imbalances in orgone flow could lead to various diseases, including cancer.
I see. So I'm seeing the energy connection here. So how did he propose to manipulate this orgone energy?
He developed a device called the orgone accumulator. It was essentially a chamber made of alternating layers of organic and inorganic materials.
Wait, so the idea was that just sitting in this box was supposed to heal you?
That was the theory. Reich claimed that the orgone accumulator could concentrate orgone energy and direct it into the body, restoring balance and promoting healing.
And I'm guessing this didn't exactly become a standard medical treatment.
Not quite. Reich's work was highly controversial and met with a lot of resistance from the scientific and medical communities. He was eventually accused of practicing medicine without a license and even imprisoned.
Wow. Talk about being silenced. But even if his specific claims about orgone energy weren't true, the idea that there might be subtle energies at work in the body is pretty fascinating.
It is, and it leads us to a broader question. What if our current understanding of biology and medicine is incomplete? What if there are forces and mechanisms at work that we haven't yet discovered or fully understood?
It's a humbling thought, But it also opens up the possibility for some incredible breakthroughs. Maybe some of these alternative treatments, even the ones that sound a bit outlandish, are tapping into something real.
Perhaps. And that's why it's so important to keep an open mind, to question our assumptions, and to encourage rigorous scientific investigation into all potential avenues of healing.
Right. It's like we were talking about earlier. We have to be careful not to limit ourselves based on our assumptions. So where do we go from here? What are some of the key takeaways from all of this?
I think there are several. First, we've seen that the history of medicine is full of controversies, suppressed discoveries, and dissenting voices.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that scientific progress is rarely a straight line.
Right.
It's messy, it's political, and it's often driven by individuals who dare to challenge the status quo.
And sometimes those individuals pay a high price for their courage.
Yes, indeed. Reif and Reich are prime examples.
Yeah, for sure.
Second, we've explored the fascinating concept of pleomorphism and the possibility that microorganisms might be far more adaptable and complex than we previously thought.
Which could have huge implications for how we understand and treat diseases like cancer.
Absolutely. And finally, we've delved into the intriguing world of vibratory energy medicine and the potential of using frequencies, light, and other forms of energy to influence biological processes.
It's a field that's ripe for further exploration, but one that requires careful scientific scrutiny to separate fact from fiction.
I couldn't agree more. And that, I believe, is the ultimate message for our listener. To remain curious, to stay informed, and to always approach extraordinary claims with a healthy balance of skepticism and open-mindedness.
To keep digging, to keep questioning, and to never lose sight of the possibility that there's still so much more to discover about the human body and the mysteries of healing. Yeah, it really does make you wonder what breakthroughs might be just around the corner if we just keep exploring these unconventional ideas.
Absolutely. And that ties in with another crucial point that's highlighted in your sources. We've focused a lot on the challenges and the pushback that these alternative treatments have faced.
Right.
But it's important to acknowledge that not all skepticism towards them is unwarranted.
Okay, so you're saying there are legitimate reasons to be cautious.
Exactly. While it's exciting to consider the possibilities of these, alternative approaches, it's equally important to be aware of the potential risks. One of your sources, a study on the use of alternative cancer treatments, found that some patients who opted for these treatments actually experienced worse outcomes.
Oh, wow.
Compared to those who received conventional therapies.
So it's not just a matter of natural is always better.
Not at all. Natural doesn't automatically equal safe or effective.
Right.
And in some cases, these alternative treatments can actually interfere with conventional therapies.
Really?
Potentially reducing their effectiveness or causing harmful interactions.
That's scary. That's a sobering reminder that we need to approach these treatments with a balanced perspective, weighing both the potential benefits and risks.
Precisely. And this highlights the crucial role of scientific research in determining the true efficacy and safety of these treatments. Rigorous clinical trials are essential to separate hope from hype.
So it's not about blindly accepting or rejecting these alternative treatments,
Right.
but rather about demanding evidence and critical evaluation.
Exactly. And that's where organizations like the National Center for Complementary and Integrative Health, NCCIH, play a vital role. Their mission is to rigorously study these complementary and alternative therapies, providing unbiased information to both the public and healthcare providers.
So in essence, it's about bridging the gap between conventional medicine and these alternative approaches, finding ways to integrate the best of both worlds.
That's the ideal scenario.
Right.
Ultimately, the goal is to provide patients with the most effective and safe treatments possible,
Right.
regardless of where those treatments originate.
I think this deep dive has really opened my eyes to the complex and often controversial world of alternative cancer treatments.
It is a fascinating area.
Yeah, it's clear that there's a lot more to this story than meets the eye.
Absolutely. And it's a story that's still being written. With ongoing research and a commitment to critical thinking, we may one day see a future where conventional and alternative therapies work together, harmoniously to conquer diseases like cancer.
A future where energy and frequency play a vital role in healing alongside traditional approaches. It's a fascinating vision.
Indeed. And as we conclude this deep dive, the most important takeaway is this. Keep questioning, keep exploring, and keep demanding evidence.
Okay.
The pursuit of knowledge and healing is a journey, not destination.
Well said. Thank you for joining us on this incredible exploration of alternative cancer treatments and medical controversies. We hope this deep dive has equipped you with valuable insights and a renewed sense of curiosity. Until next time, Keep those minds engaged and those questions coming.